The galaxy was quiet, too quiet. For years, for decades, the stars had carried only routine voices, trade reports, patrol updates, dry diplomatic speeches. Most broadcasts were dull, repeating the same safe words of peace and order. The galaxy had learned to live in silence after the great firestorm of war that once consumed it. But then, one night, a new signal appeared. It was weak at first, almost lost in static. At the edge of the Orion Gate listening post, a young alien operator leaned closer to his console. His ears twitched. His eyes narrowed. Something strange was bleeding through the noise. It was not a merchant, not a council diplomat, not a pirate signal. It was a human voice. The operator froze. His species had been raised on warnings of humans. They were nightmares from the past, names whispered in fear. Humans were supposed to be gone, erased, burned. Out in the Great Human War, every textbook, every archive said the same thing, extinct. Yet here, carried across the cold black void, was the sound of a single human breathing into the come. The operator's claws shook. His first instinct was to cut the signal, to report it, to pretend it never existed, but curiosity held him still. He raised the volume. The words became clear. "I was there," the voice said. Low, harsh, cracked with age and pain. "I was there when the last fires burned. I was there when the stars turned against us. I was there when the truth was buried. And now you will hear it." The operator's hearts pounded. His training told him to shut the channel, but his body would not move. He felt as if the entire galaxy was holding its breath. And in truth, it was, across hundreds of listening stations, across hidden receivers, across secret archives, the same signal spread. The same voice, the same human. The galaxy that had erased Earth from memory now heard the ghost of it speaking again. The survivor's voice carried a weight no machine could create. It was not the sound of power or wealth. It was the sound of endurance. A voice that had crawled through ashes, walked across ruins, and refused to die. "They told you we were beasts," the survivor said. "They told you we were fire without reason, anger without end. They told you the galaxy rose together to destroy us. That we were finished, extinct, gone." The voice paused. Static filled the silence. Every listener leaned closer. They lied. In a council station orbiting a red giant, a dozen alien officials stared at one another in frozen silence. The old stories were not supposed to return. The human war was an ancient scar, carefully hidden, carefully rewritten. No trace of survivors had ever been confirmed. And yet, here was a living witness. The survivor spoke again. "I was a soldier. Not the greatest, not the strongest, just one among many. But I lived. I saw the battles you erased from your archives. I saw the fleets you never recorded. I saw the truths you buried under your lies. The galaxy needs to know. And so I will speak, even if my voice is the last human voice you ever hear." The sound of his breath filled the pauses between words. It was slow, heavy, almost broken. Listeners felt each inhale like a blade, each exhale like smoke from a dying fire. "Do you remember the siege of Orion?" he asked. "Of course you don't. Your council erased it. Your schools never taught it. Your archives pretended it never happened, but I was there. I stood on a burning deck while human ships fought 10 times their number. I watched men and women hold the line until the stars themselves seemed to bleed. We lost, but we did not break." The voice grew rougher, sharper. "You thought you destroyed us. But destruction is not the same as silence. You burned our worlds, but you could not burn the memory. You shattered our fleets, but you could not shatter the will. You buried us, but still, here I stand, speaking to you now. On distant mining colonies, workers froze as the signal came through open channels. On trading stations, merchants stopped their deals and turned up the volume. On military ships, commanders listened in silence, their faces pale, their eyes darting. The voice of a human filled the galaxy again. And in that moment, the galaxy remembered its fear. The survivor's tone changed, softer now, almost sorrowful. You never understood us. You never asked why we fought. You only saw monsters. You only saw rage. You never saw the desperation, the hunger, the need to survive. You thought we were a plague, but we were only human. And you will never understand what that means. The words echoed, as though the man was speaking not only to listeners, but to the stars themselves. I know you are listening, he continued. I know the council is watching. They are afraid. They should be afraid, because the truth cannot stay buried forever. Not when one survivor still breathes. Static crackled. The voice fell silent for a long, dangerous moment. Listeners leaned so close they could hear their own hearts. Then the survivor spoke again. The war never ended. It only changed. Gasps spread across stations and ships. Conversations broke into panic. If the human war was not truly over, what did that mean? What danger still lingered in the dark? The survivor's voice hardened. Your leaders told you a story of victory. They told you humans were wiped out. But victory built on lies cannot last. The galaxy stands on false ground, and sooner or later, the ground breaks. And when it breaks, all will fall. He coughed. A harsh, rattling cough. But still he continued. You want to know how I lived? You want to know what I saw? Then listen. Do not look away. Do not silence me. Because if you close your ears now, when the truth finally strikes, you will not survive it. The operator at Orion Gate leaned forward, his claws gripping the console. His body shook, but his mind was burning with questions. Who was this human? How had he lived? What was he trying to reveal? And most of all, why now? Why speak after so many years of silence? The survivor gave no name. He gave no location, only words, only memories, only warnings. I walked through ruins where the ground still glowed. I watched skies filled with broken ships, their lights fading one by one. I heard the last voices of my people fade into silence. And yet, here I am, still breathing, still remembering, still warning. His voice dropped lower. A whisper carried across the void. You believe humans are gone. You are wrong. Static roared, then faded. The signal pulsed again. The survivor's tone was sharp now, edged with something between anger and fire. You think you know the galaxy. You think you know history. But everything you built rests on a lie. And lies always break. The war was not the end. It was only the beginning. All across the galaxy, the broadcast spread. Some whispered it was a trick. Some believed it was a ghost. Some prayed it was only an echo of the past. But none could turn away. The voice of humanity had returned, and it promised the galaxy would never be the same again. The signal did not fade. It grew stronger. More stations picked it up. More listeners tuned in. And with every passing hour, the galaxy sank deeper into silence. The survivor spoke again. His voice was rough, broken by years of dust and ash. But his words carried the weight of fire. You think you know the war, he said. You think the stories in your archives are true. You think the records tell you everything. But you know nothing, because they erased the truth. They burned it with fire. They buried it with lies. You believe you saw the end, but you never saw the beginning. Every alien child in the galaxy had been taught the same tale. Humans were reckless predators, a violent mistake of evolution. They fought without reason, burned without mercy, and destroyed everything they touched. The Council had united the galaxy against them. Worlds, fleets, and empires came together for survival. In the end, humanity was crushed, erased, and forgotten. That was the story. But the survivor's voice cut through it like a blade. "I was there," he whispered. "I was there when the war began. And it did not begin the way you were told. It did not begin with human rage. It began with fear. Not ours, yours." His words traveled like knives into the hearts of listeners. They were not the words of propaganda. They were not the words of a council speech. They were raw, naked, and heavy with memory. In those early days, the survivor said, humanity was not strong. We had ships, yes, but they were fragile. We had weapons, yes, but they were small. We had courage, but courage does not stop fleets. We were explorers, not conquerors. We searched the stars, hungry for connection, desperate for survival. And we found you. We reached out. We offered our hands. He paused. Static filled the silence. They cut our hands off. Across the stars, alien listeners shifted uncomfortably. Their histories told a different story. But the survivors. Words felt too real to ignore. They feared us, he continued. Not because of our power, not because of our numbers, but because of what we were. Because of what we carried inside. They looked at us and saw a danger they could not control. They saw survivors. And survivors are hard to kill. The survivor's voice sharpened. The first battles were not battles. They were massacres. Fleets fell upon our colonies without warning. Cities burned before we even knew we were at war. They told the galaxy we struck first. Lies, all lies. They wanted humanity gone before humanity had a chance to rise. Images formed in the minds of listeners, human outposts torn apart by orbital fire, colonies erased in silence, families running into the dark with nowhere to hide. For the first time, many in the galaxy questioned the history they had always trusted that the survivor pressed on. But we did not die. Not then, not there. You thought you could end us in a single stroke. You thought we would break. But you learned. The truth. Humans bend. We do not break. The war spread like wildfire. World after world lit up in destruction. And at every world, humanity stood and fought. You never wrote about those battles, the survivor said. You erased them from your records, but I remember. I remember the siege of Calrose, when 6 human ships held a system against 50. I remember the burning skies of Astron, when farmers took up rifles and held the ground for 3 days against armies of machines. I remember the silence after Orion, when the stars glowed red for weeks. You never recorded these things. But I lived them. I carry them still. In trading stations, merchants whispered in fear. In schools, teachers turned off their screens. In military bases, commanders clenched their jaws. The story they had trusted all their lives was unraveling. The survivor's voice softened. You saw us as monsters. But monsters do not hold the line when all hope is gone. Monsters do not die for one another. Monsters do not fight for survival when the whole galaxy calls them beasts. We were not monsters, we were human. He let the silence stretch. He let the words burn. And then he spoke again, slower now, as if pulling memories from wounds that never healed. Do you know what it feels like to watch your world burn? Do you know what it feels like to hold a weapon in your hands and know you cannot win? Do you know what it feels like to fight anyway? That was the human war. That was our truth. The galaxy trembled. For the first time in centuries, fear was. Not of human armies, but of human truth, the survivor went on. They told you we were endless in rage. But that rage was born from grief. They told you we fought without reason. But we fought for survival. They told you we could not be trusted. But it was the council that lied. The council that betrayed. The council that feared us. In council chambers, officials hissed at each other in panic. Some demanded the signal be blocked. Some whispered of killing the survivor, but none could deny the power of his voice. It had spread too far, reached too many. Even if silenced, the words would live on. I walked through battlefields of glass. The survivor said, I saw soldiers laugh as they died, because even in their last breath, they defied you. I saw children grow old in bunkers, never knowing the light of the sun. I saw the last defenders of Earth scream into the stars before fire took them, and still. You tell your children it was victory. The voice grew stronger, more steady. The war was not what you were told. The war was not conquest. It was survival. It was the fight of a people who refused to die, no matter how many enemies came. That is the truth you buried. That is the war you forgot. Static crackled. The survivor paused. And then his final words for the night struck like a blade into the heart of the galaxy. You think it ended. You think it is finished. But the forgotten war never ended. It only sleeps. And one day soon, it will wake again. The transmission cut. Silence fell. But the silence was different, now that it was not peace. It was fear. And in that fear, the galaxy began to wonder, what if the survivor was right? What if the war was not over? What if humanity was not gone? The survivor's voice returned. For hours, the galaxy had waited in silence, hungry for his words. The first transmission had shaken them. The second had torn cracks in the stories they trusted. And now, as the third signal burned across the stars, listeners leaned forward, their hearts pounding. Static cleared. The voice spoke again. You have heard of the war, the survivor said. You have heard pieces of the truth. But you have not heard everything. You do not know the weapon. You do not know the secret we carried into the dark. Every station froze. Every commander stiffened. The word weapon carried weight in the galaxy. For centuries, it had meant power, fear, dominance. But the way the survivor spoke was different. It was not the pride of conquest. It was the whisper of something dangerous. Something forbidden. They called it Project Horizon, the survivor continued. It was not a fleet. It was not a cannon. It was not a machine of steel. It was something greater, something deeper. Something the galaxy could never understand. He paused, letting the silence drip like water in a cave. You believed we fought only with ships and guns. But the real battle was always beyond weapons. Horizon was the key. Horizon was the spark. Horizon was what you feared most. And Horizon still exists. On the listening post at Orion Gate, the alien operator gripped his console until his claws dug into the metal. His throat went dry. His training screamed at him to cut the signal, to erase the words before they spread. But his body would not move. He had to know. Everyone had to know. The survivor's tone grew sharper, more deliberate. You wonder what Horizon was. You wonder what humans could build in the shadows of war. You think of weapons of mass destruction, fleets of fire, machines to burn worlds, but you are wrong. Horizon was not destruction. Horizon was survival. It was our answer to your fear. Gasps spread across stations. Was it possible? Could the humans, hunted and broken, have created something more dangerous than fleets? Something more dangerous than the Council itself? I cannot tell you everything, the survivor said. Not yet. The galaxy is not ready. You will hear only pieces, only fragments. But know this. Horizon was not a weapon of war. It was a weapon of will. A weapon that could bend the very shape of the fight. A weapon that was not meant to destroy, but to change. His voice grew darker. They told you we were monsters. But Horizon was proof that we were more, that we were different. That we carried something no other race carried. You feared it. You still fear it. That is why they betrayed us. That is why the Council erased us, because of Horizon. Across the stars, whispers grew louder. Some believed it was madness. Some believed it was truth. But all of them felt the same thing, fear of the unknown. Fear of what humanity had left behind. The survivor's tone softened, almost like a man remembering a dream. I remember the first time I saw Horizon. It was hidden, deep underground, in a chamber of light. Scientists worked in silence. Soldiers stood guard with weapons ready. They spoke in whispers, as if their voices alone could disturb it. I stood there, young and afraid, staring at something. I did not understand. It did not look like a weapon. It did not look like a machine. It looked alive. He stopped. Static filled the silence. Listeners leaned closer, their minds burning with questions. What was it? He finally said, "It was hope. Hope made into shape. Hope made into light. Hope made into something the galaxy had never seen before. That was Horizon." In council halls, leaders shouted over each other. Some demanded the signal be blocked. Others warned that blocking it would only make it stronger. Others whispered a darker thought. What if Horizon was still out there? What if it had survived? The survivor pressed on. You believed Earth was the heart of humanity. You believed. When Earth fell, we were finished. But Earth was only the surface. Horizon was the core. Horizon was hidden far from your eyes, far from your fleets. You burned our skies, but you did not touch it. You thought you ended us. You were wrong. You ended nothing. On distant colonies, workers trembled. On hidden stations, smugglers swore. On military fleets, captains clenched their fists. The voice of the human carried like thunder. You do not understand what it means to be human. The survivor said, "You think strength is numbers. You think strength is steel. You think strength is fleets, but strength is none of these. Strength is the will to stand when all else falls." Horizon was that will. Horizon was the shape of survival. And Horizon cannot die. The operator at Orion Gate whispered aloud without meaning to, "What is Horizon?" The question echoed across the galaxy. Every listener asked the same. What was it? Was it technology? A living weapon? A secret army? Something more? But the survivor did not answer, not fully. You want to know? He asked, "You will know. But not today. Today, you must understand why the war was fought. Why they turned the galaxy against US. It was not because of fear of what we were. It was because of fear of what we could become. Because of Horizon." He coughed, his voice cracked with pain. But still he continued. "They hunted us. They burned us. They called us beasts. But the truth was simpler. They were afraid. Afraid of the day Horizon would awaken. Afraid of the day humanity would stand not as prey, but as equal. Afraid of the day we would no longer bend to their lies. That was why the war began. That was why they erased us. That was why they betrayed us." In the silence that followed, every listener felt the same chill. The war was not about monsters. It was about fear. The war was not about destruction. It was about Horizon. The survivor's tone grew steady again. "I survived the war. I survived the fire. I survived the silence. And I survived Horizon. I carry it still. Not in my hands. Not in my ship, but in my blood, in my voice, in my memory. As long as I breathe, Horizon breathes. And as long as Horizon breathes, humanity is not gone." Static roared, louder now, like the galaxy itself was trying to drown him out. "But," the voice cut through it, "do not think this is only memory. Do not think Horizon is lost. It is not lost. It sleeps. And one day soon, it will wake. And when it wakes, the galaxy will change. Forever." The transmission cracked. Sparks danced across listening consoles. Operators cried out. The signal twisted, almost breaking apart. But before it faded, the survivor's final words for the night struck like lightning. "You believe you ended us. But Horizon still exists. I still exist. And humanity will rise again." The signal died. Silence spread. But the silence was no longer safe. It was heavy. It was dangerous. It was alive. And across the stars, every listener whispered the same question, again and again. What is horizon? The signal returned. Not as weak static this time, not as a broken whisper, but sharp, steady, almost cutting. Across the stars, across ships and colonies and stations, the survivor's voice filled the silence once again. You have heard of the war. You have heard of horizon. But you have not heard the truth of why it all began. The truth of who pulled the strings, the truth that was buried under centuries of lies. Tonight you will hear it. Tonight you will know the betrayal. The galaxy tensed. The word betrayal carried a weight heavier than any weapon. For centuries, the Council had ruled with the story of human rage and alien unity. If that story was false, then what held the galaxy together? The survivor spoke slowly now, each word like a blade cutting into the silence. Do you believe your Council? He asked. Do you believe their stories? Do you believe their speeches of unity, of survival, of noble war? If you do, then you believe lies, because it was never about survival. It was never about peace. It was never about saving the galaxy. It was about control. It was about fear. It was about power. And humanity was the price. In council chambers, officials shouted, demanding the signal be cut. But the broadcast had already spread too far. It could not be stopped. Not anymore. The survivor's voice grew sharper. I was there, before the flames. I saw the secret meetings. I heard the whispers. The council did not fear what humans had done. They feared what we had discovered. They feared what we were about to share. A discovery that could free every world, every race from their chains. A discovery that would end their power. That discovery was horizon. He paused, letting the silence choke his listeners. They could not allow it. They could not allow freedom. They could not allow truth. And so, they built a lie. They painted humanity as beasts, as monsters, as predators who could not be trusted. They told the galaxy we were a threat. And then they gave you the order. Destroy us. You obeyed. You all obeyed. Across the stars, alien listeners shifted uneasily. Soldiers clenched their fists. Workers whispered. Teachers turned away from their screens. If the survivor spoke the truth, then everything they had been taught was wrong. I remember the first betrayals, the survivor said. We had allies once, worlds who stood with us. They promised protection. They promised loyalty. They promised friendship. But when the council gave the command, they turned. They betrayed us. They fired on our ships. They burned our homes. They cut us down with the same weapons we had shared with them. That was betrayal. His voice cracked, not with weakness, but with memory. I stood on a colony where the defenders trusted their alien allies. They opened their gates. They welcomed them in. And then the gates burned. The allies became executioners. Children died, screaming in the arms of those they had once trusted. That was betrayal. Gasps spread across listening stations. The image was too clear, too sharp to be invention. It carried the ring of truth. They told you humans were dangerous. But who? Was it that fired first? Who was it that betrayed first? Who was it that killed in the name of lies? It was not humanity. It was them. It was your council. It was your leaders. And you followed. The survivor's voice grew like thunder now, deep, angry, unbroken. Do you understand what you did? Do you understand what you erased? You did not destroy monsters. You destroyed friends. You destroyed explorers. You destroyed a people who only wished to survive. And you did it because your leaders whispered lies into your ears. That was betrayal. In the trading halls of far colonies, merchants wept. In military fleets, captains stared at the floor. In schools, young students whispered to each other. In fear, the survivors' words spread doubt like fire through dry grass. They erased the records. The survivor continued. They destroyed every archive. They burned every book. They silenced every witness. But they did not silence me. I lived. I remember. I carry the truth in my blood, and I will not let it be buried again." He coughed, a harsh sound, but pressed on. "You think the war ended because humanity was weak? No, the war ended because humanity was betrayed. We were surrounded not only by enemies, but by liars, by false friends, by the very worlds we trusted. We fought, yes, we fought with fire, with steel, with blood. But in the end, betrayal cut deeper than weapons. Betrayal burned brighter than fire. Betrayal was the true war." The survivor's voice softened suddenly, like a wound opening. "I watched friends fall, not to enemies, but to allies who turned on them. I saw ships destroyed not by foreign fleets, but by those who once stood beside us. I heard the last voices of my people, crying out not in rage, but in disbelief. They did not understand. They could not understand. Why? Why did you betray us?" The silence after his question was unbearable. It stretched across the stars, pressing, heavy on every listener's chest. Then the survivor spoke again, sharper now, his tone like fire. "Your leaders will tell you this is false. They will tell you I lie. They will tell you I am a ghost, a trick, a weapon of fear. But ask yourselves, why would I lie? What do I gain by speaking to you now? I have nothing, no fleet, no army, no world, only my voice, only my memory. Only the truth." On countless ships and colonies, the same thought echoed. What if he speaks true? The survivor pressed on. They betrayed humanity. But their betrayal did not end with us. Do you think you are safe? Do you think your loyalty will protect you? No. Betrayers betray again. Liars lie again. Today it was us. Tomorrow it will be you. When the day comes that you discover something they cannot control, when the day comes that you rise too high, they will burn you too. That is the nature of betrayal. His words hit like thunder. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy began to question the council, not in whispers, but in fear. "I survived," the survivor said. "I survived because I saw the truth. I survived because I knew betrayal was the real enemy. Not fleets, not armies, not weapons, but betrayal. And now I give that truth to you. Take it if you dare, ignore it if you choose. But know this: the truth cannot be buried forever. Not while I still breathe. Not while Horizon still sleeps. Not while humanity still waits." The transmission cracked again, heavy with static. But before it faded, the survivor spoke one last time. "They betrayed us. They will betray you. And when that day comes, remember the words of the last human. We were not destroyed. We were betrayed, and betrayal never ends." The signal cut. Silence fell once more, but this silence was different. It was not shock, it was not grief, it was not fear. It was doubt. Doubt in the council, doubt in the story, doubt in the very foundation of the galaxy. And doubt was more dangerous than any weapon. The galaxy waited. For days now, the survivor's voice had come and gone like a storm. Each transmission tore open old wounds. Each message spread doubt, fear, and anger. And now, as the fifth signal cut through the void, the galaxy held its breath. Static roared. Then, slowly his voice returned. "This is my last message," the survivor said. "Listen carefully. For when I finish, you may never hear me again." Every station froze. Every ship stilled. Every commander leaned closer. His voice was weaker now, yet it carried a weight that filled the stars. "You have heard of the war," he continued. "You have heard of Horizon. You have heard of the betrayal. Now you must hear the warning, the final warning. Because the war never ended, it only changed, and now it begins again." His words struck like thunder. Panic spread through listening posts. Operators whispered in terror. Council leaders shouted in fury, but no one turned away. No one could. The survivor's tone sharpened. You believe you are safe. You believe the war is memory. You believe humanity is gone. But I am still here. Horizon is still here. And the war still lives. It lives in silence. It lives in shadows. It lives in every word I speak to you now. And one day soon, it will rise again. In military fleets, captains clenched their fists. In colonies, workers froze mid-step. In schools, children stared at silent screens, their teachers too afraid to speak. The galaxy listened, as if chained by his words. I have seen what is coming, the survivor said. You cannot stop it. The council cannot stop it. No fleet, no army, no empire can stop it. Horizon stirs. Humanity stirs. And when we rise, the galaxy will face a choice: stand with us, or fall before us. His voice cracked with the weight of memory. You think you destroyed us, but destruction is not the same as silence. You think you buried us, but the grave is not the same as death. You think you ended the war, but the war has no end. It waits, it watches, it hungers, and now it wakes. Gasps spread across the stars. The words felt alive, heavier than any weapon. The survivor spoke again, slower now, as though forcing each word out of a broken body. I am not here to threaten you. I am not here to beg you. I am here to warn you. The galaxy stands on the edge of fire. Horizon is not gone. Humanity is not gone. And when the storm comes, you will not survive it unprepared. His voice softened, almost sorrowful. You think humanity is only flesh. You think humanity is only ships and guns. But humanity is more. Humanity is memory. Humanity is will. Humanity is the fire that refuses to die. You betrayed us. You erased us, but still we rise. And when we rise, you will see what humanity truly is. On the Orion Gate listening post, the operator felt his claws shake. He could not move. He could not breathe. It felt as though the voice spoke not only to the galaxy, but to him alone. You must choose, the survivor said. When the day comes, when Horizon wakes, when humanity stands again, you will have to decide. Will you stand with the Council, with their lies, their betrayals, their chains? Or will you stand with us, with truth, with survival, with freedom? Choose wisely, for your choice will decide whether you live or whether you burn. The words cut deep. Every listener felt the weight of choice pressing on their chest. The survivor was not only telling a story, he was demanding an answer. Voice grew weaker now, fading into static. I do not know if I will survive much longer, he whispered. My body is broken. My time is short, but my voice lives, my memory lives. Horizon lives. Humanity lives, and that is enough. Enough to change everything. Enough to break the lies. Enough to wake the fire. His breathing grew louder, heavier. Yet still he pressed on. This is my final warning. Do not trust them. Do not believe them. Do not close your eyes. The storm comes, and it will not wait for you to be ready. The storm comes, and it will not show mercy. The storm comes, and with it, humanity returns. Static surged. Sparks danced across consoles. The signal trembled. But before it ended, the survivor's last words struck like lightning across the galaxy. Remember this. Humanity was not destroyed. Humanity was betrayed. Humanity was not erased. Humanity was hidden. Humanity was not ended. Humanity sleeps. And when humanity wakes, the galaxy will tremble. The transmission cut. Silence followed. But the silence was not like before. It was not peace. It was not safety. It was not emptiness. It was the silence before a storm. On the Orion Gate station, the young operator finally leaned back from his console, his claws shaking, his chest tight. He had no words, only fear, only questions, only the memory of that voice. Across colonies and fleets, Across stations and worlds, the same question burned in every mind. Was it true? Was the survivor real? Was Horizon still out there? Was humanity truly coming back? In council chambers, leaders shouted in rage. Some demanded silence. Some demanded war. Some demanded the truth. But none could deny what had happened. The voice had spoken. The truth had spread. The warning had been given. The galaxy would never be the same again, because somewhere out there, hidden in the dark, the last human still lived, and Horizon still waited.